Welcome back to another edition of the Couch GM Live. We're going to be doing this every Monday at 10 a.m. Today, we'll be joined by Gary Hill Jr. To go through the Mariners season so far. The Mariners, after being swept at San Francisco, are now 3-7. But is the sky really falling? We'll get into it. Robles obviously is now hurt. Who replaces him? And then make sure to tune in live every Monday at 10 a.m. if you'd like to share your thoughts, opinions, vent a little bit. But this is going to be a podcast that will kind of take the edge off a little bit. There's a lot of sky is falling out there. I think that the Mariners have been extremely unlucky so far this season. So before we bring on Gary, a couple updates. First off, make sure to check out blacklabelsupplements.com. They are the sponsor of this podcast. Use code CouchGM15, CouchGM on Black Label to get 15% off your order. Also check out Baseballism. They're the official off-the-field brand of baseball. Make sure to use code CouchGM15 to save yourself 15% on Baseballism. And if you or someone you know is thinking of buying, selling, or refinancing a property on the West Coast, Washington, Oregon, California, Idaho, or Arizona, if you're a sports fan or an athlete, it's my goal to help be the go-to lender in the Pacific Northwest. So with that, let's bring on Gary Hill Jr. Gary, thanks for joining. How was your travel back from San Francisco?
Well, we made it back. It wasn't the ideal trip, certainly, but here we are. We're back at home, so it's good to be home.
The plane landed.
Yeah, the plane landed. We're all here, so that's something.
Got to start with the hot topic. Victor Robles. There hasn't been much information that has come out. Initially, it looked like he was holding his wrist. I thought it might be his wrist, but on the replay, his shoulder went completely back. I assume that his shoulder was dislocated, and there's some damage there. Any updates whatsoever so far on Victor Robles?
Yeah, we got nothing yet so far. It was being looked at yesterday before we left San Francisco, x-rays, all that sort of thing. So I imagine we'll get more concrete info when we get to the ballpark today. It didn't look great, obviously, with the shoulder. It didn't look great. The attention given to it after the fact, it looked pretty serious, but I'm dealing with the same information that everyone else is dealing with, just what we saw on the field. So at this point, it's hard to imagine there's not going to be an IL stint coming. The question in my mind is, okay, what are we looking at? Is this something that's going to be a week or 2 weeks, or is this something that's serious, more serious and longer? Like at this point, we just have no idea. And man, that last, 10 minutes yesterday in San Francisco, it just couldn't have been worse given the injury to, a fundamental player on your roster. And then the next pitch, you get walked off the second time in 3 games. It was a heartbreak of a series given how it played out, and really injury to insult after, Robles goes down, which, losing walk-off style is bad, but the Robles thing really hangs over, it looms over everything, because that's more big picture moving forward. That, a loss is a loss. It's one loss. It's not great, but the Robles injury could affect things moving forward. So we'll just see how it plays out.
Yeah, and that's the leadoff guy for the Mariners. That's 30+ stolen bases. That's a plus defender, as we saw with that play of the year candidate that we saw yesterday. And then this series in general, the start of the second Luis Castillo in that first game, they lose in extra innings. Of course, Randy Arozarena ties it up yesterday in the 9th, and then that happens. They end up getting walked off. This series and a lot of the games in this season so far, soft hit balls, just finding the gap for the opponent, not finding the gap for the Mariners. The Mariners guys hitting the ball hard. And I have a lot of, underlying statistics that we'll get into throughout this episode that shows why the Mariners are one of the more unlucky teams so far this year. Of course, there are some things that stand out that need to turn around, but the sky is not falling. We're 10 games into the season. There's 152 games left. Of course, Victor Robles, we'll have to see if he's out for a month or the season, but there's a lot more positive than people might be putting out there.
Yeah, you look at how the season has gone so far, and obviously it's not a great start. You didn't want to start 3-7. You wanted to start faster than that, but Mariners are where they are right now. It's interesting when you look at game by game, outside of, I think, the 7-0 loss to the A's, is every game has been decided by 3 or fewer runs. And it's funny because you kind of detailed, when you're playing close games constantly, it's those little moments that are making all the difference in these games. And whether it's a bloop or a bleeder or one guy coming out of the bullpen and not being effective. It's these little moments that are costing them in these games. It's funny because it feels like on days where they get the big offense, which they've had a couple of those, they haven't gotten the pitching. And on days when they've gotten the pitching, they haven't gotten the offense. It's just been a very uneven start in that regard, where they haven't put things together. They haven't played well overall, which has kind of led to this. It's like been one phase in a particular game that has seemed to cost them. So, they're not playing bad. They're not playing great. They're kind of uneven. A lot of ways it reminds me of watching Bryce Miller so far this season, where Bryce Miller hasn't been bad. He hasn't been the guy that we saw so consistently last year. It's just kind of been uneven start for him, is how I would think about it. And I kind of think about it in the same regard with the Mariners so far this year. But that being said, I always talk about April as a month where you can't win anything in the month, but you can bear yourself and make it harder. They haven't done that yet, but these next bunch of games are pretty critical, especially when you're talking about the Astros and the Rangers coming in, and the Rangers are off to a good start. If this continued for the next 6 games and you found yourself, I don't know, with 5 wins total or something along those lines, if you can't win one of the next 2 series or both the next series, then you find yourself in a situation where you're going to have to dig yourself out. So I look at these next 6 games, especially because they're the division, that it's time to put together a series win, maybe a couple series wins, try and climb back to 500 and just stay around, stay near Texas.
The positive is that this is not the NL West. The NL West is absolutely stacked. The Giants are in first place. They're 8-1. The Dodgers 9-2. The Padres 8-2. I saw that the Padres with like a 1-loss record with I think through 8 games, they went from like a 3% to a 5% chance of winning the division because of how good the Dodgers are. You look at the AL West, the Rangers currently are 8-2. They're in first place. The Angels are in second place at 6-3. The Houston, the Astros are 4-5 in third place. The Athletics 4-6, and then the Mariners are currently 3-7. But this is a division that is up for the taking, and we saw what the A's are. They're going to surprise a lot of people, but also the Mariners, they will perform better. And as you mentioned, they're heading into a 3-game series versus Houston starting today. They'll then face three games versus Texas to end the week. And Logan Gilbert will be on the mound, so we'll have another turn in the rotation, see if we can get things ironed out. Bryce Miller, as you mentioned, is still trying to find it right now. It's a feel thing. His stuff is moving. It's just a matter of getting that feel back. I want to go through just the overall rankings in team statistics. I'm going to go through these every week and update them. We'll see if they improve or if they kind of stay where they're at. But overall, team hitting compared to the league, they are currently 23rd in batting average. Their batting average increased from a 175 to a 213, up to 213 after that series against the Giants. They are 11th in on-base percentage, which we'll see from the walks here. They have a 320 on base. They're 18th in OPS at a 674. They're 15th right in the middle in strikeouts this year. They're not leading the league in strikeouts on a historic pace at this point. They're second in walks, which is surprising, with 43 walks. They are 28th in RBIs with 28. They are 25th in runs scored, and they're 6th in stolen bases. So I guess from that, the big number that sticks out to me is that they're currently second in walks. What have you seen from their patience at the plate so far?
Yeah, they've done a good job getting on base. Unfortunately, I think of the game 2 in San Francisco, Robbie Ray, for example. Like, Ray walked him 5 times, and the Mariners just couldn't take advantage. So the walks are great. Getting on base is great. Like, you want to see that moving forward, but they've got to take advantage of the situations, and that's something they haven't done. Whether it's driving one in the gap to drive in a couple runs, knocking one out of the ballpark with runners aboard. We've seen some homers. They've mostly been solo every single time. There hasn't been the case where they've put a lot of runners on and they've been able to take advantage. And even the first game in San Francisco, which I haven't seen a game like that. That thing was really unhinged for most of it. But, the Mariners scored a ton of runs. They still had an opportunity to score a bunch more during the course of the game. There were base runners all over the place. And that's kind of been a consistent theme. One of the consistent themes through the season for the Mariners is There's been times where they've put traffic aboard, which is great because I'm someone who thinks that the runners in scoring position batting average kind of is what it is. I'm more interested in your opportunities. Like I want the most opportunities as possible. I think of it like when you look at individual RBI leaders at the end of the season, generally they're the ones that had the most at bats with runners in scoring position. I mean, it almost goes 1-for-1. Like you get over 100 RBIs, there's a good chance that you were one of the leaders in batting with runners in scoring position. It's an opportunity stat. Like you did the work to drive them in. So I kind of think of that as a team as well. Not so much about batting average runners in scoring position, but getting the most opportunities as possible. So the good thing is they've been getting opportunities. They just haven't been able to cash in. So here's the question moving forward. Can they start cashing those opportunities in? And that's going to tell the tale of the offense moving forward because there are some good things, as you point out, happening. There's some not so good things that are happening. Like they're not striking out as much. They're walking a lot. But the other stuff, doubles in particular, has been a pretty big mystery to me so far this season. I think they have 6 so far this year. I think Robles has 3, Randy has 2, and Cal hit one yesterday. I mean, that's one of the things. It's not always homers all the time, but they need a little bit more slug, I think.
Yeah, and kind of getting into those statistics of runners in scoring position to start out the year, they are dead last in the league in batting average with runners in scoring position. They have a 132 batting average with runners in scoring position so far this year. Before the Giants series, it was 105. They're 28th in on base percentage with runners in scoring position with a 256, 28th in OPS with a 418 OPS. They're 30th, dead last in RBIs with runners in scoring position at 12, and they're 21st in strikeouts with 16 strikeouts, runners in scoring position. And as you allude to, the increased walks, this more of the small ball play that we're starting to see, and having a guy like Ryan Bliss being able to be an absolute menace on the base path. And we see Dylan Moore stealing every opportunity that he can get, getting those guys moved over into runners, into a scoring position. I think, yeah, the more opportunities that you can have, obviously these numbers have to come up with actual bottom line stats. But I guess kind of speaking to that, with the small shift in mindset that we're going to see with this year in the small ball play, there was I believe the very first game to where Jorge Polanco was 2 for 2 and then he bunted. It didn't work out. Overall, I do like the concept of bunting a guy over. It's in the right situation. What are your thoughts on what we've seen so far from that standpoint?
Yeah, I'd be surprised if we saw a situation like that again. A guy who was 2 for 2 in
That's
the
one out
game
already.
and bunting on his own. Yeah, like I don't think we'll see a ton of that moving forward. I think there are opportunities. There are situations. I'm not a huge fan of bunting in general, except for I actually like bunting for a base hit if you can. Like that's part of Robles's game, and I like that. I like Rayleigh will drop one down once in a while if he sees a third baseman way back or whatever, or shift it over. Like I think bunting for a base hit has a lot of value if you have the skill set. There are situations. I'm not no butt ever in terms of sacrifice, but there are situations that it's called for. Extra innings. You got a guy at second base. It's a tied game. You're the home team. Yeah, bunt him to third with no outs. That's fine. There are opportunities for that. We haven't seen a ton of sacrificing during the Giants series. There were some opportunities where, I think an old school regime would have bunted a few times, and they didn't. They let the Mariners swing away, and so I don't think outside of the Polanco one early, I don't think we've seen a ton of like old school bunting guys over that kind of thing. We have seen them be aggressive on the bases, a lot more aggressive, and they have more guys that have the ability to do it. When I look at kind of the opening day roster last year compared to how the season is starting this year, they just have more guys that are capable. Like Bliss is a guy that when he gets on base, turn him loose. Now it's burned him a couple times. Like they got picked off twice against Robbie Ray, and that's part of the reason why he walked 5 guys and they couldn't take full advantage because 2 guys got picked off. So there can be a downside. It's a percentage play. Like And in that game, they stole 2 bases. They were picked off twice. Like, that's not a great percentage in that particular game. But overall, stolen bases wise, they've been pretty good.
And I do think the aggressiveness is a good thing overall. There was the time where Ryan Bliss was thrown out at home plate with a pass ball. He made it from second base, and just because his foot was a bit up, it's like you got to keep shooting your shot. You got to keep trying. And I do like being aggressive instead of being passive and hoping for another hit, because as we've seen, those hits are going to be fewer and farther in between.
Yeah.
Have
No,
we seen the torpedo bats arrive in Seattle yet?
I have not seen them yet. Sorry about that. I'm fighting through sickness all weekend, so I'm still trying to battle through it here. But I've not seen them. I imagine we'll see them pretty soon. It's funny. I've kind of been diving into this phenomenon a little bit and just hearing from, I guess, bat scientists is what we're calling them. Uh, it's interesting because at least my understanding is the way the bat is the way they've changed the barrel essentially on the torpedo bat. It can really help certain hitters in certain hitters' swings. I don't think, from what I've been told, I don't think it's like wow, this is going to solve the problem for every single hitter in baseball. I think it's a very specific kind of hitter and a very specific kind of swing. I imagine that we'll see a ton of guys try this out because we've seen other hitting fads, whether it's like the knob of the bat or the barrel of the bat carving stuff out at the top. Like there have been hitting fads over the years. I imagine we'll see a lot of people try this out. It will stick with some guys and it won't stick with other guys. And I imagine it'll be the same with the Mariners. I imagine a bunch of guys will try it out and maybe it sticks with a guy or two. We'll find out.
Yeah, it's more so for the people that are getting jammed a little bit or that
Yeah.
are making contact on the lower part of the bat, like Aaron Judge. He's sticking with his regular bat. I looked it up. He swings a 35-inch, 33-ounce bat, but yeah, it's not every guy that's going to be using that. We'll see who starts using it. Of course, guys in BP will be breaking that out, but it'll be interesting to follow. And just kind of getting into the unluckiness that I mentioned earlier on that the Mariners have had so far. Their expected weighted on base average is currently at 9th in the league at a 337 expected on base average, whereas currently they are at a 302. That is the sixth biggest differential in all of baseball, meaning that they're technically the sixth unluckiest team when looking at expected on weighted on base average. With expected batting average, they're at 17th. Their expected batting average is 241, which is the 8th biggest differential in baseball. Their expected slug is the 4th largest differential at a 354 current slug and expected slug of 424. And I mean, you see guys like Julio Rodriguez is hitting the ball extremely hard. Randy Rosarena is hitting the ball extremely hard. Julio has a 94.2 average exit velocity. He has just a 216 average. He has a 249 expected batting average. The thing about him is that he has a 44.7% whiff rate, which is tied for first in the league with also Luke Raley. So also Randy Rosarena, 92.9 average exit velocity. He has just a 139 batting average with a 250 expected batting average. What are you seeing from Julio's approach at the plate, Randy's approach at the plate?
Yeah, so Randy got off to, I thought, a really good start. Like, he was sizzling the ball around all over the place and just had a lot of tough luck. And I think about that game against the A's where, he blistered the ball at the middle with the bases loaded, and Muncy made a great play on it. Or the one he hit to center field that on a lot of different nights, that's gone. A lot of different parks, that's gone. So there's a lot of stuff like that I felt for Randy early. He had a tough day against Hicks until he came through. He had a tough day yesterday until he came through late. So it's been that kind of year so far for Rosarena, which, I guess we could say this about this entire conversation. Like, it is a 10-game sample that we're talking about. So I always, I understand that it's the only 10 games we have to talk about, but you can't draw any conclusions from 10 games. And I think the hardest part overall, I think, for Mariner fans is a lot of this feels like a lot more of the same. So it doesn't feel like a 10-game sample. It just feels like carryover from the past. And we'll see if it continues like this, if the team continues to struggle offensively and some of these trends really set. But in terms of this season, I always like to look at a new season as a new season. We'll see how it goes. For Julio, yeah, I thought there were really some really good signs in San Francisco. He really hit the ball really hard in San Francisco. He had a game where he had 4 over 100 miles per hour in play, which is great because we see him go in these just white hot grooves where he's just sizzling the ball all over the place, and he can do it for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. We've seen it for a month before, and he is like the best player in the game when he's in one of these grooves. So I am hoping that that's what this turns into. And we've seen a couple of long balls early on, and he generally has not been a very fast starter, right? That's what we've seen the last couple of years. But to me, this is pretty good sign because as we've seen, we saw it in the first game against San Francisco when he had a really great offensive day. He's just a game changer for the offense. The offense for the Mariners is just completely different when he's that kind of hitter. So you hope that he's entering one of these phases right now where he's just going to blister the ball all over the place.
Yeah, I saw that Julio Rodriguez home run off of Robbie Ray, like first pitch fastball over the right center field wall. You look at the Oracle Park spray chart. There's the entire left field wall. This is all right-handed hitters from 23 to 24. It's all scattered throughout left field. You got center field, and then you have deep over to right field. And then there's that awkward wall that kind of jets out there. And then, Julio's the only one that hit the ball exactly where he did. As a right-handed hitter, that is very tough. And to have that approach of hitting the ball away with power, that's a great sign. And then yesterday with that hanger from Jordan Hicks, he belted that one early in the game. So a lot of positive to see from what he's done.
Yeah, that homer to right field was amazing because that's a place that right-handed hitters just don't go at that ballpark because I love that ballpark. It's one of the greatest.
It's beautiful.
It's gorgeous. If you're a Mariners fan, and I know the Mariners only go there every 2 years, but if you've never been there as a Mariners fan, you've got to make it at some point. You've got to make it happen. And we were fortunate this time that it was a couple of day games. I think day games, especially there, are amazing. We had nice weather too, which is great. But the water is incredible. The ballpark is great, and it's really unique. Like it's 309 down the right field line, but the wall is 24 feet high, and then it goes out to 415 in right center, which is forever away, and it's only 391 to dead center. It's a really unique. That being said, so for a right-handed hitter, going the opposite field, it just dies because right-handed hitters generally don't have that kind of power to put it over the wall. I was looking up, I think since 2020, there's only a handful of right-handed hitters that have gone oppo in that ballpark for a home run. So it is pretty significant. In fact, there's only one right-handed hitter that's gone splash hit into the water, and it was Elliot Ramos. The end of last year.
That's right.
There's been 105 splash hits. He's the very first right-handed hitter to fly the wall into the water. It's a really tough park for right-handed hitters going the opposite way, and Julio conquered it, which was pretty impressive.
We saw Cal get a splash hit yesterday. There was also a couple other guys that would have gotten it if it stayed foul. And then getting into some other hitters here, Jorge Polanco. It looks like he is back. Like if he could stay on the field, he has been the hottest hitter for the Mariners so far. He's got a 450 batting average, 2 home runs, a 1.226 OPS. His 407 expected batting average leads all of baseball, but we haven't seen him for the past few games. What have we heard on Polanco so far? What we heard is that his knee was sore, so he was held out.
Yeah, Dan alluded to that. We ended up actually seeing Polanco in the game. It was kind of because of everything else going on, it was kind of overlooked. But the Mariners were out of guys essentially when Robles got hurt. So Polanco came in to play first base at the very end. And
did he play first base?
Yeah, he went to first base. Dylan went to third, and then Masterboni went to right field to take Robles' spot. Because I was wondering, as the injury was happening, I'm like, okay, if Polanco's out, I thought, okay, do you Garver's the DH? Do you do something there? I didn't know what they were going to do because I assumed Polanco was out, but he ended up in the game at first base, which is kind of interesting for me. I'm wondering, especially if Robles is going to be out for a while, I'm wondering how these pieces are going to move around because, to your point, keeping Polanco on the field is going to be key because they need his bat. And he's just looked really good. He's looked good in spring training. He's looked good to start the season. And I say that because it's just looked very different than last year. He didn't look like this last year, moving around and with his swing and everything. So although he's missed the last couple of games, as you point out, he's looked healthy. His swing has looked really good. And that's the bat that they need in the lineup. So I'm wondering, he's going to need off days, obviously, as we move through the season. But are we going to see him more at DH maybe? Are there some other pieces that you can move around to get that bat in the lineup, but not have to worry about his legs in the field? We'll see how it plays out, but it's an encouraging start. That's for sure.
Yeah. And speaking to what we've seen from Jorge Polanco at third base so far this year, he's been on the right side of second base his entire career. And it's just a completely different game when you're playing on the left side of second base. Dylan Moore came up as a shortstop. He's obviously a super utility guy, but seeing him play third base, he's used to the moves that you have to make at third base versus Polanco. He's still learning how to, plant, throw on the run, all these different things to pick a ball. And so if we can keep Polanco on the right side of second base, we'll see if he plays more first base, likely DH more, but then, Rowdy Tellez, is he playing first base a lot more? Luke Raley, is he playing first base? How do you find at bats for all these guys? Rowdy Tellez hasn't had the hottest start as well. You need Polanco over these guys. You need Luke Raley over these guys. And then I guess kind of getting into, Victor Robles, let's assume that he's out for 2-3 months now. Do they go with Dominic Canzone? Do they go with Miles Mastrobuoni? He's going to get more playing time. Obviously, he's another super utility guy, and he's a bat to ball guy. I asked him on the sideline, his conversation with the Mariners coming into spring training, like why they brought him in. And they told him to just be himself. He's basically like a lefty version of Dylan Moore, right? You can kind of plug him wherever you want. There's also Leo Rivas, who they could call up to help with the spot. Who would you move in to fill out this lineup?
Yeah, there's a few different options there. Hopefully it's not 2 or 3 months. Man, that would be a pretty big blow. Right. So I've been thinking about this. There's a few different ways you could do it. Like you could move Raley back to the outfield and essentially have a Julio, Raley, or Rosarena outfield. And then with the infield, I don't know, you bring up Locklear and maybe have like a Locklear Tellez platoon at first base. And then you figure out, maybe you're DHing Polanco more, or maybe he's in third mix with Moore and Solano. And so kind of moving the pieces around that way. Mastrobuoni kind of fits into that as well. So you just kind of play matchups with first and third, that kind of thing. And just like your outfield set, basically, you're not worrying about it. Or you bring up someone like Canzone and give it a go. I know he hit a couple home runs yesterday. He's been up before. We know he's got power. Maybe he can come up and be a stick that can provide some pop, and then you stay, he gets some outfield run and Raley moves back and forth. You kind of have the same mix as it was. It's just kind of Canzone in Robles' spot, not all the time, not like Robles was, obviously, but that's one way to do it. So I've kind of been thinking about a Locklear Canzone, one of those guys being called up, and then just kind of moving the pieces around. It's tough because Robles is a guy who's an everyday right fielder who's your leadoff guy. It's you're staring at a couple of different problems. And he's just so unique the way he plays, just the chaos ball, and when he gets on base, he causes so much problems. They can't replicate that. It's a reason why one of the reasons why they were so good offensively at the end of last year is because he was so good to end the season. He was one of the best outfielders in the game to end the season. So it's a problem that there's no clean, like, oh, you just drop this guy in to fill the spot. Like, I don't know what they do to lead off. Like, does Julio go to lead off? Do they do something else? Like, there's a lot of unanswered questions moving forward with this.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. What do you do with the lineup? You don't move JP Crawford back up to lead off. No. You just slide every guy back up. So Julio leading off, and then down the list. So Cal 2, Randy 3, and then down the line.
That might be the cleanest solution, honestly. Or you have Julio leading off, maybe Polanco a switch batting second when he's in there, and Cal then Randy, then Rayleigh, that sort of thing. I mean, there's a couple different options, but in terms of your leadoff guy, Julio might be the best option.
Yeah. Whatever it is, we'll be seeing it tonight.
Yeah, we'll find out. Yeah, it's hard to imagine that Robles won't spend at least some time on the IL, just given what we saw yesterday.
How much pain he was in.
Yeah, how much pain he was in. And just, I mean, the shoulder is not supposed to move like that, right? I mean, the way he slammed into the net like that. So
yeah, it came all the way back.
I just hope he's not out for a long period of time, because he's such an important part to the Mariners, and selfishly, like, I just really enjoy watching him play. Like, I love watching him on the field. He's super entertaining. He's super fun. And just being away from the park too. Like, he's just a great dude to be around. And so it's unfortunate, and especially unfortunate. He was just going all out. That's just who he is. He plays super hard. He put himself on the line, and he got hurt for it, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, someone commented, I don't get why he didn't just let the ball fall foul. I mean, he's just not that guy. He's a guy and you see how far he ran in the outfield to get to that spot.
Yeah. Like, I get that sentiment from somebody. And like, if you would say, now that we know what we know, if you would have told Victor, like, hey, you're going to hurt your shoulder if you try and catch this ball. Okay, maybe I won't try and catch it. But he's so competitive. And these guys are so competitive. Like, if they see a ball in a game that they're trying to win, everything's on the line in that game.
In the ninth
inning, he's got a chance to catch the ball. And I think you have to respect that as a fan. I really do. Because he put it all on the line to try and make the catch. Like, he didn't care about his body going after that ball. He did not care about the consequences. He was trying to go all out to make that catch, which is something I really respect, because it would have been easy to just slow up and say, I'll get the next one. And I understand that sentiment, right? Because, I talk about that with guys running hard to first base, because I think when you're an everyday ball player and teams expect you to play every single day, like, I'm not one that thinks you should be sprinting to first base every single time on a routine ground out. I know that sounds weird. There are times to sprint to first base, obviously, but there are some things about this game when you're trying to play every day, you're trying to stay in the lineup, the team has to have you in the lineup every day. There are things you've got to be careful with your body, and you can't always go 110% all the time. But in that situation, when you're going after a ball like that, the game's on the line, it's hard for me to I just can't fault him. I can't. In fact, I respect it 100%.
Absolutely. And the same people would also say, if the ball dropped right next to him after running that way, he's like, why didn't he just lay out? Why didn't he just try to get... And then also Julio, people comment when Julio runs to first base. Sometimes there's some really close plays at first base that shouldn't be close necessarily because it's a routine ground ball. But if he was running a little faster, he would beat it out. But in the same light, I played adult league baseball. I've strained my hamstring the past couple of years, and hamstrings take a long time to recover from. So you do have to play it safe in certain cases. Now, moving into to Ryan Bliss, he's been a really interesting guy. He's been a menace on the base path. I really love how he plays. He's made fantastic plays at second base. He makes the routine look routine. He makes the tough plays look routine. He currently has a 179 batting average. His bat does need to catch up. He needs to adjust to the big league pitching. He has a 219 expected batting average, and his differential in both expected slug and expected weighted on base average leads the team. So he could be the most unlucky guy so far when looking at the underlying statistics. What do you see from Ryan Bliss and what he brings to the table?
Yeah, first, I've been pleasantly surprised by his defense. He has turned in some really nice plays at second base. They've really been impressive because, when I came into the season, infield defense was a concern of mine, and a lot of it was just the unknowns. Like, we had never seen Polanco at third base. Rayleigh hasn't played a lot at first, and we haven't seen Bliss a lot at second base. And so I didn't know what to expect in a lot of these spots. And so far, so good for Bliss for me. In fact, not only has he made the routine plays for the most part, he's turned in some real dazzling plays, especially the last handful of games. So that part has been impressive. On the base pass, for the most part, he's been excellent. He was picked off by Ray, which wasn't great, but for the most part, he's been pretty dynamic on the bases. You're right about the offense. We've seen flashes of it. He has been unlucky. I was thinking about he hit it 104 off the bat to left center early against the A's, where, if he just pulled it a little more, it's a home run. He's had a couple of those kind of things where he put some exit velo on a ball. He's got some pop in there, certainly. We've seen him. He went over 100 a couple days ago, which was great to see. So there have been some flashes of the bat. It just hasn't been that consistent. But again, he did spend some time in the majors last year, but it wasn't a lot of time. This can kind of be what happens with a guy getting their first taste of Major League Baseball. Is you're going to see some flashes of like, oh, this is really good, or some things he does really well. But it's an adjustment. So we'll see what happens. Talking to him, the key for him this year and what he talked a lot about, so this is something to watch when you watch him, is he wanted to hit the fastball. He said he needs to hit the fastball. He didn't hit the fastball well last year, especially the fastball with velo. So that's something to watch, because that's what he spent all offseason trying to figure out. So when you're watching him next week, 2 weeks, next month, as he develops, that's something to keep an eye on and see his adjustments with the fastball.
Interesting. Yeah. And we'll see if his value in the field can help offset his adjustments at the plate. And it's like, don't rush to Cole Young to bring him up to have the same type of experience. It's like, let Ryan settle in. He might be the guy long-term even.
Yeah, we don't know. Yeah, there's a lot of potential there, and you can see it, but we don't know where his ceiling is. We don't know what kind of player he's going to turn into. I always think it's hard when it's always easier when an offense is kind of cooking, and then you have a young guy that can just be a young guy at the bottom of the lineup, and they don't have the weight of expectations. But it's harder when you have an offense that's struggling, because then you're looking for production anywhere you can get it. So there's a little bit more pressure there.
A few other underlying statistics that we've seen from the Mariners offense so far this year. I mentioned that they have the sixth biggest differential in weighted on base average. So you could say that they're the sixth unluckiest team so far this year. Their average exit velocity is 20th in the league at 88.8 miles an hour. Their hard hit rate, though, is at 18th, which is 39.9% of a hard hit rate, which is 95 plus miles per hour off the bat. They're 10th in barrels per plate appearance at 6.4. So again, we'll have to see how that plays out the rest of the way. But Cal Raleigh hit a home run yesterday. He is now tied with Mike Zunino for the lead among catchers in Mariners franchise history with home runs with 95. What have you seen so far from Cal Raleigh after recently signing that extension? And we haven't had you on since he signed that extension. So takeaways from how big that is to sign your guy behind the plate that has helped bring this rotation to what it has become.
I think it's amazing. I love that Cal's going to be a Mariner, if not his entire career, the vast majority of his career, because he, to me, is a Seattle Mariner. He's the kind of guy who I think he's going to be in the Mariners Hall of Fame. He already has one of the great signature moments in Mariners history, and I'm hoping for more, that he'll have more of those moments. It just feels like a win-win-win all the way around for me. Like, for the organization gets a player who is extremely productive on the field. He's one of, if not the best catcher in the game right now in baseball. When you talk about offense, when you talk about defense, he's tremendous off the field. He's a great leader for the organization. He has had a hand in developing this pitching, which is the backbone of the team. I think it's great for the fan base, because it's not often that you get this kind of connection between a player and a fan base. And Cal has that connection with this fan base. Everything from his nickname to just how everyone feels about the guy. Everyone loves Cal. And Cal loves Mariner fans. It's mutual. And it's a big win for Cal, I think, too, because, I think about legacy a lot. And I think about how a guy connects with a team. And sure, Cal could have gone on and signed with Name Your Team and been an important part to whatever they've done. But I don't think another fan base will feel about Cal the way Mariner fans feel about Cal. That's a really tough thing to replicate. And I think it stuck with Cal as like spring training is a great example. As we're down there, it's Alvin Davis walking around. Edgar and Dan, of course, have been such a big part of the team. Griffey shows up, and Franklin Gutierrez. All these guys that are connected to the organization, and I think Cal recognizes that and thinks that can be me. I will always have a home with the Mariners. Like he's always going to come back and he's going to get a standing ovation and he'll tip his cap to the crowd every time because that's the kind of player he is. He's already the point that I think is the tipping point already, with all respect to the current Mariners manager. Like we'll be calling him the greatest catcher in Mariners history very soon, and he'll still be a Mariner for a lot more years to go. But he's that kind of player. And so I'm thrilled that he's going to be a Mariner for a long time. And just strictly on the baseball side, it's a really difficult position right now to find productive players. And he is productive on both sides. Offensively, especially with the home runs, and especially defensively. He's just one of the best. So I'm thrilled that he's going to be a Mariner for a long time. He's off to a slow start this year, but the home run was a good sign. I've been thinking about him and Rayleigh in particular as they kind of warm into the season, because those are two guys, when I think about their offensive MVPs last year, like Cal was number one. And I think Luke Rayleigh was number two for me. I think a lot of the things he did were overlooked. And maybe it's because he's thought of as more of a platoon guy. But when you look at his numbers, and I know he didn't play first base a lot last year, but if you take his numbers from last year, slugging percentage, WRC plus, whatever, like his numbers were up there within top 5, 6 of the first baseman in the game. And we're talking about Vlad, some of the best of the best. So I think he's a real key for the Mariners. So Cal, Luke, we've talked about Julio already, but those guys bringing the slug and bringing the thunder, that's what the Mariners are going to need moving forward. It was great to see Cal with the homer, so hopefully we'll see a bunch more in these next 6 games.
And he's a guy that's you can still consider as underrated in the league. You look at the preseason rankings among catchers, he's still like out of the top 5. It's like, what are we doing here? He's consistently leading the league in home runs. He just won the Platinum Glove. Like he helps. I think he had the lowest ERA among any catcher in baseball. Like when he's catching, the pitching staff has the lowest ERA in baseball. And I think it's just so reassuring for the fan base as well to see that ownership is willing to start investing in the guys that they've drafted, developed, brought in-house. And I heard a quote from Stanton recently is that they're not really wanting to bring in guys sign the big name free agents, bring them in out of, but they're willing to spend the money on the guys that are in-house that they know that are already good fits in the clubhouse. And if they could now extend Logan Gilbert or some of these other guys, Cal Raleigh voiced his opinion during spring training that he wants to stay with the Mariners and that he's open to signing in an extension. Logan Gilbert just said the same thing during spring training. I want to get your thoughts briefly. So we saw Garrett Crochet just sign, a 6-year, $170 million contract with the Red Sox with barely any, really showing that he's been able to be a starting pitcher for an entire season. Yeah. Looking at that contract, it's an average of $28.3 million per year. I mean, Logan Gilbert has become one of the best pitchers in baseball pretty quickly. Yeah. So it's like, with Cal, it's a team-friendly deal. Cal gets the guarantee of the big contract and, a big number, but also the Mariners get the guarantee of a solid guy for a long time. Mm-hmm. I'm curious, do you think Logan Gilbert maybe gets extended at some point this year or later next year, and what that might look like?
I hope so. I don't know what that would look like at this point, because it's just honestly the way Logan's going, Like it's just going up and up and up. Because I think about where he fits in with starters in the American League. And, when you start to put him side by side with the best in the league, like we're talking about a potential Cy Young Award winner, right? We're talking about a guy that can finish top 5, top 3, maybe win it this year, depending on what happens. So I know he loves being a Mariner. I know he fits in really well, and he feels like, from our conversations, that the Mariners really helped him get to where he is now and really let him be who he is. And so I think that's all important to him. And so there is obviously, I think, mutual interest on both sides. Whether it works out or not, we'll see. Like it is funny. We're kind of seeing a rash of extensions. We just saw the Vlad Giant
Yeah.
extension. But generally they're kind of tough to make happen. We've seen more recently, but because it does take both sides. Like both sides have to have mutual interest. And I certainly think there's mutual interest on both sides. So I definitely think it could happen. And I hope it happens. Like I feel the same way about Logan I feel about Cal. Like I want Logan to be a Mariner. I want him to be a Mariner for his career. And, I think about Logan as really the icebreaker, because when I think about all the great stuff the Mariners have done with pitching and all their young pitchers, Kirby, Wu, Miller, the whole thing, for me, Logan is the one that really got all of this going, working with the staff and really evolving and changing exactly who he is. And, when he came into baseball, he really relied on his fastball. He was a fastball guy. And, he could have stayed the same exact guy he was and been fine. Like he would have been a decent major league pitcher with his exact stuff, not changing a thing. And that would have been fine. That has never been enough for Logan. He's overhauled everything. And while he came into baseball, I think he was throwing his four seam at like 60%. And now it's like, I think it's below 40 he's rolling with now. And it's because he's evolved and changed and worked at all the secondary stuff. Year after year, off season after off season, constantly trying to get better. And I think that's the thing that I respect so much about Logan. Like he's a super talented guy. He's got a lot going for him, the extension, everything, but he works so hard to make himself the best he can possibly be. And, I think about Cal that way too. And you just love having your organization full of guys like that, because what an example when you're opening day starter, when a guy that's going to compete for the Cy Young Award, like you always see him working. He's always working to get better. And what a great example. Cal's the same way. So I hope it happens because I love Logan and I love that he's a Mariner.
And Gilbert does lead the way for the rest of the rotation to potentially sign extensions at some point. And it did start with Logan. He was a first-round draft pick in 2018. Cal was a third-round draft pick that same year. They're really two peas in a pod, those two. So it's like you have Cal now. I think it's going to be a bit easier to get Logan to even take more of a team-friendly deal to stay in Seattle with his buddy and something that's familiar, that's comfortable, that will allow him to take even the next step. And I don't know. You can tell me if I'm wrong, but I feel like hearing Logan talk this year, he talks with much more confidence, I feel like, than in years past. Like after this last season, now it's like he's a different kind of guy. Like he was solid and he was confident in what he was doing, but now it's like he is confident and he knows that he's one of the best pitchers in the league.
I agree. And he knows it because he is. He recognizes the truth. Like he is one of the best pitchers in baseball. There's no doubt. I think about that 2018 draft a lot because that's something I think we've gotten used to it. Like, oh, they picked Logan in the first round and they picked Cal in the third round. Like that is not a normal thing that happens in a major league draft. Like they had two organizational pillars that they picked in the same draft. It's pretty remarkable. And what I like about both of them, Cal, one of the reasons that he went in the third round is there was questions about whether he'd be able to stay as a catcher.
Right.
Like that was some of the draft chatter that year. And you look at him, the platinum glove now. I mean, you would never think that given what we've seen. But to his credit, he's worked and worked and worked at all aspects of his game, including framing, everything else. And with Logan, he's a first round pick. He wasn't the first pitcher chosen. In fact, Casey Mize, who the Mariners just faced, he was the first pitcher taken, or first player taken in that
One
draft.
overall.
One overall. And it's funny because you look at the top 2 pitchers from that draft in B-War, Logan's actually second because Tarek Skubal, who was picked in the 9th round, is first.
Oh,
and
man.
I just think about that draft a lot and how much it means for the Mariners. And they become such a great drafting team, which is so important this day and age. Like, you have to develop your own players. You have to develop them and make them better. And I think the Mariners have done a really good job of that. And drafting wise, I'm really curious to see where this 2023 draft goes, not to get too far sidetracked here, but they've just had some really great drafts along the ways. But the 2018 one I think about all the time because it has changed the course of the franchise.
Absolutely. And then after that, it's Kirby. And then you got Miller and Wu in the same draft.
Yeah.
And then so on and so forth. And we saw last week, Baseball America updated their top 100 rankings. Mariners top pitching prospect Ryan Sloan was bumped into the top 100. So now the Mariners have 8 players in the top 100 via Baseball America, which leads all of baseball. And only one of those top 8 are a pitcher and Ryan Sloan. The rest are all bats that are going to be coming up. And we've talked a ton about what is going to be coming through the ranks now. Now it's from the hitting side. So if we can extend some of these core pieces in the rotation at the same time that young, bat depth is coming up, it's going to make for keep extending that window as long as you can.
And that's the way you do it. You keep drafting well, keep internationally signing well. Scott Hunter does such a great job. He's
right.
Someone that probably doesn't get talked about enough in the Mariners organization, but he's the head of the draft. And it's always fun to talk to him because he's someone that's very inclusive in terms of getting information from all kinds of different areas, whether it's the analysts inside the Mariners organization, leading on the scouts as well that are on the ground, the guys we never hear about that watch 1 million baseball games a year to try and unearth the next guy from Stetson or Elon or whatever. Yeah, they're just doing a really great job right now drafting.
Yeah, I guess when Corey Kluber and Jacob deGrom come from a university, you might want to, go watch a few more games there. And then also Gilbert's coming out of there too.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah. And getting into a bit of the pitching staff before we get out of here. So far this year, just going through some of the top line stats, starting rotation is 11th in innings pitched. They are 23rd in ERA. So we've seen some of the guys that, have some shaky starts. They're 16th in whip with a 1.28. They're 20th in batting average with a 250, 17th in home runs allowed with 7, 11th in walks with 16, and 16th in strikeouts. And then looking at the bullpen, they are 6th in innings pitched. So the Mariners have had to rely on the bullpen quite a bit this year compared to the rest of the teams. Bullpen is 16th in ERA. They are 23rd or 25th in whip with a 1.56, 25th in average. And then down the line, we've talked about how unlucky the Mariners have been at the plate, and then also how lucky the opponents have been also at the plate. Looking at the Mariners pitching staff, they are 3rd in hard hit rate at a 35.9% hard hit rate. They are 1st in average exit velocity with 87.8 miles per hour in average exit velocity, and they're 14th in expected weighted on base average at 316. So they are limiting the average exit velocity better than any team in baseball, but we just have not seen those same results in the field. I guess overall as a pitching staff, what are your takeaways?
Yeah, I think there's a lot going on here. First of all, I think some of the rotation numbers in particular are skewed in a 10-game sample when you have like a Hancock blow up. That.
Oh yeah, that was huge.
Yeah, when you have all those runs and hits added without any innings, essentially, it could really, and then add Castillo starting to that as well. That spot in the rotation skews things a little bit because I think that the other 4 guys have been good. Like Logan's been great. I think Wu and Miller have been fine so far. And Castillo, I thought was excellent his last time out against the Tigers because I thought that was a tough matchup. with a lot of lefties. Lefties can get to Castillo from time to time, and he really kept them quiet against Skubal as well. So I give Castillo a ton of credit, the Rock Castillo, the ton of credit last time out against Detroit. So I think the rotation has been fine. I think they'll be better, though, as we go. Bullpen's been interesting. There's kind of, I guess I look at it in two different ways. There's kind of, and I always look at bullpens like this. There's kind of the A side of the bullpen, the leverage side, and then there's the other side of the bullpen. And unfortunately for kind of the B side is they often get stuck with, they're the ones that are going to have to soak up the innings. They're the ones that can be put in situations that aren't the best matchups for them. They're just thrown into a situation where, hey, we need like 2 innings here. And it might not be optimal for them. So they just have to wear it sometimes. And sometimes the numbers get inflated. But also, I don't think like Saucedo hasn't pitched as well as we've seen in the past, right? In his situations. There's been good and bad from the bullpen so far. Like Munoz has been fine. You know, he's walked some guys, but he's done his job. I think the most pleasant aspect so far out of the pen has been Gabe Spire has looked great. And it really stood out to me against the Giants when he, especially Adames, a righty, he just blew a 97-mile-per-hour fastball right by him. He touched 98. Like, the stuff has been wicked. So I love that moving forward. Santos has been a bit uneven, like no strikeouts, some walks. So, but he hasn't pitched forever. The stuff's really good. Like, I think that's been fine. But the backside, you know, Bizzardo, Saucedo, there's just, when they've had opportunities, they haven't pitched well early. And when you're not getting the long innings from the starters, they've been more exposed, I think, than you would have liked early on in the season. I am optimistic, though, like given kind of that leverage side, when you eventually add Brash, when you eventually add Taylor to the mix, there's a couple other guys too waiting in the wings. Like, I think the bullpen has a chance to be a strength moving forward. It's just been kind of an uneven ride so far.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm not worried one bit about the starting rotation. We'll see when George Kirby comes back, if he is fully healthy. I guess any updates on George Kirby?
I think we'll find out today. I think Justin Hollander, usually the beginning of a homestand, will give us some injury updates. So there'll be news coming out today because he'll talk about Robles and he'll talk about Kirby. So those are the two big topics that he'll talk about sometime this afternoon. So I wish I had more for you on that, but we should know something at some point this afternoon.
That's good to know. Okay, cool. And then I guess one name that I definitely want to point out is Carlos Vargas. He's been very impressive so far this year out of the bullpen, and he was a guy that was traded for from the Diamondbacks, and he's a guy that has electric stuff, 100 miles an hour, but he's throwing his sinker 54% of the time, whereas in years prior it was the four seam and a cutter, and he actually went out there for let's see, it was 3.3 2/3 innings against Detroit. Really impressive, being able to limit the Tigers over a majority of the game, really. I guess, what have you seen from Carlos Vargas? Have any insight on him? I feel like he could be a guy that could be used as a leverage guy at some point.
Yeah, he saved the day that game because we were looking at the math. They were using so many pitches early. I'm like, how are they going to get through this thing? And he got him through.
Just kept going out there.
Yeah, he just kept going out there. So, it's funny. We talked about Vargas a lot last spring training after the trade because his stuff was so electric. He just had really tough time commanding it and spent all year at Tacoma. Never saw him last year at all. And part of the two seam, and I think they've tried this with big stuff guys who struggle with command, is maybe he can command the two seam a little bit better. And so far, he's commanded the two seam better. And, while it's not 100 miles per hour, the stuff is still good. That's a hard fastball. And so he's pretty intriguing, I think. And he's been a nice surprise for the Mariners so far. And it's just funny because it's the name we talked about so much last offseason, but it's been this season where he's kind of made an impact so far this year. And not only with the stuff, but the length as well. Like, that was a long outing that I did not expect, but he's an intriguing guy. He's certainly earned more opportunities the way he's pitched so far. And, we'll see. We'll see what, it's funny with bullpens. you just never know from year to year. And there's always a guy or two, especially with the Mariners, that pop and end up being a guy that, I mean, Snyder was that guy last year that moved into a leverage role and was huge for them. And so I always look at guys early in the season, a guy like Vargas, like, I don't know, maybe he's somebody that's going to move into a leverage spot as they move through this thing. So we'll see how it plays out. But there's never been a question about the stuff. The stuff is there. The question is about the command, and I would say so far so good.
And his fastball isn't at 100, but 96.6 with sink will get the job done most times.
Yeah. Still pretty good.
So today it's the Astros versus the Mariners. You got Logan Gilbert on the mound versus Wesneski. Tomorrow you have Luis Castillo on the mound. Wednesday it's going to be the second Luis Castillo. Do we expect them to go with Castillo again, or is there potentially another option? Are they going to want to try out Hancock another time? Hancock was so unlucky. Also, you have Logan Evans.
Yeah. So it's a good question. I think we'll see Hancock again at some point this year. I'm not sure if it'll be the next start. I was thinking if it wasn't going to be Castillo, he probably would have been optioned the day after to bring up another arm since he's still here. I'm guessing it will be Castillo. I mean, maybe that changes before the game. But I think we'll see Hancock again at some point. I mean, you're going to need, we've already seen it. You're going to need multiple starters. That's the way baseball works. So I think we'll see him again. And I'm assuming that Castillo is actually going to take this start. There's some intrigue on the other side too. I know there's some illness that's kind of ripping through the Astros right now. So their TBA Tuesday and Wednesday. I think if they're healthy,
Valdez was pushed off.
Yeah, it sounds like it will probably be Brown on Wednesday, and if Valdez is ready, it'll be him on Tuesday. But that's kind of up in the air given their situation. So it's kind of going through their team right now. So we'll see. Brown has pitched really well. So that'll be a tough matchup. And Valdez is Valdez. I think we all know Valdez at this point, but we'll see if he's healthy enough to go.
And then Friday, we assume that it's going to be Bryce Miller. And then the following day, Brian Wu, and then Logan Gilbert again on Sunday. So make sure to tune in to the Couch GM. Make sure to watch the Mariners throughout the season. Stay up to date. You know, the sky is not completely falling. There's a lot of positive to still find out there. Gary, really appreciate you jumping on and tuning in. And yeah, we'll see what happens the rest of this week.
Yeah, anytime. Hopefully the next time we talk, they're on a 6-game winning streak or something. That'd be fun.
Everyone will be excited and happy. And yeah.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you. We'll see you all next time.